Hey, folks, hope everybody is doing well. My day has not been what I planned. It hasn't been bad necessarily, just I had certain things I thought I was going to get done today, and that's not what happened. Anyways, hope everybody's doing well. And did my hair just get shorter? I mean, 2 weeks ago was the stream revealing the haircut. This was the cut. I didn't get it cut again, if that's what you're asking. But I hope people had a lovely weekend. I did have a very nice weekend. Yeah, that was quite nice. How's life? Exhausting at the moment. That is one of those questions that the answer is going to vary greatly, depending on when you ask me. Couple of things. First is we have a hard stop time at 8 today because I have another stream to get to that is not technically immediately after this, but is pretty soon after this. So I have to be on it an hour after the stream ends, but like logging in and getting brought in on it and making sure that all that happens the way it's supposed to. I need a buffer for that. That stream, for the record, I'll mention it again when I have to end it, is the Transcend VR charity stream, which is over on Azeal's YouTube channel, AZEAL. A bunch of awesome people have already been on it. A bunch of awesome people are going to be on it. It was originally going to be one day. It has turned into a week. So, but yeah, I'll be on that for a chunk of time after this wraps up, which does mean we have a hard stop at 8 Eastern Daylight Time. So 56 minutes from when I said that. Hard stop. Gozer, how much emphasis are you going to put on the word hard in that case? Oh, it's a hard stop. Oh, no, we're not going to stop, Jen. We're going to stop. We're going to stop hard. It's like channeling the worst read of Christian Grey. I don't make love. Hard. Almost said it. Not gonna. May not last the whole stream. A little sleepy tonight. That is fair, Pirates. That is more than fair. What am I eating? I'm eating raspberries. I posted 2 alternate questions, one in the Discord. I'll go and delete one of them if you've watched any of the Ghost of Molly McGee season 2. Have I? I have not. I have not. I did not realize season 2 was out yet. I'll have to let the kiddo know. Michael Palin's wife passed away. Oh, that's a bummer. If you never went into YouTube, what would be your career in an alternative timeline? I don't know. I'd probably be stuck in another office job, miserable. The thing is, like, here's again where I'm bad at engaging with those kinds of questions is I can't settle into as much of an alternate reality world as I would need to give an interesting answer. Because an interesting answer would be based off of, well, then I'd be pursuing all these other interests I have, except I also pursue most of these other interests that I have now. I just don't dedicate the most time to them. But things like novel writing, Twitch streaming, the spicy site, I don't think any of them, even if I dedicated myself full time to any one of them, would actually pay my bills. So because I know that in the back of my head, my answer defaults to, oh, I'd still be stuck in an office. Like, I love what I do as a YouTuber, but understand part of how I ended up here doing this was, of the many things I enjoy doing that are creative, this was the one I could actually make a living at. That doesn't mean I haven't tried at the past or even currently as a side project doing a whole bunch of others. But none of them, even like projecting out to what would it look like if I did that full time, I don't think I would have been successful enough at any of those. And so I'd still be stuck in an office. Got to see Return of the Jedi in theaters for the re-release. My theater cheered when Vader threw Palpatine into the Death Star pit. Yes, sadly, somehow Palpatine came back. God, that freaking line. Did you know the Ghost of Molly McGee music was written by Rob Cantor of Tally Hall and actual Cannibal Shia LaBeouf fame? I did not know that. I'm going to be a bridesmaid for my cousin's wedding this Saturday. Well, I hope that is an enjoyable experience for you. Reminder that while I will try and keep up with the chat, the only thing that will guarantee I get to your question is to do it as a super chat. That's just so that I'm not, trying to drive myself crazy trying to keep up with the thing, which I tend to do sometimes anyways. But have I seen or listened to the musical & Juliet? No. I know it exists. That's about all I've got. Yeah, no, I've neither seen nor heard it. I haven't listened to a musical that's new to me in a couple of years. I mean, I suppose you can count Shrek because I went and saw that performed live, but like, it's not like I downloaded the script afterwards. So, I don't know. That's not quite what I think. Nice, HB Haga. Very nice. Delete that question with the ghost spoiler in it. Thank you, 255 AD. That is very courteous of you. I appreciate it greatly. Have you seen in War of the Worlds musical? And now, is that different from the musical concept album? Because I've heard that. Is there like a proper stage musical version? Because, favorite prehistoric creatures not dinosaurs or of the Mesozoic era? Oh, I don't know. I legit don't know. Dinosaurs were kind of the most interesting thing going on because mammals are mostly just rodents. I don't know. Saber-toothed tiger is kind of interesting. Handing in my dissertation this week, it's about the issues of England's prostitution laws, which criminalize sex. Why criminalizing sex work is a bad idea. It is. It's a terrible idea, Ben. 100%. Criminalizing sex work is counterproductive, stupid, and harmful on just about every level. And it's especially, I'm going to go off on a little bit now if it's all the same to you, but it's especially galling when people who pass anti-sex work laws of any kind try to claim that they're doing it to protect women. Because they always frame it that way, even though people of all genders get engaged in sex work, but they claim it is to protect women from being victims. Nearly every single thing that is dangerous about sex work in general and prostitution in specific is only dangerous because it's illegal. It is dangerous because they can't go to the police. Would there still be some hazard in the line of work? Yes. However, the reason the rates of abuse of in-person full-service sex workers is so high is because they can't go to the police without immediately having to confess to the crime of prostitution. So it is safe for people to mistreat them because they won't get reported. People bring up pimps. The reason that street workers historically needed pimps was because they needed someone who at least theoretically would protect them from all the people who would abuse them, and neither of those things would be part of the equation if they could just go to the authorities and say, hey, this client abused me. But they can't. Criminalizing sex work does nothing but just make life more difficult for all sex workers of every kind. So, yeah, I could keep going off. I'll bring it back. Have you seen Good Luck Leo Grand? The film has an amazing positive look into sex work. I have not. I haven't heard of that one. So, no, I'm not familiar. I know you've covered it twice, but can you do reality split in two? One doctor saves Gallifrey, 12th Doctor explodes the TARDIS. Therefore, the Doctor is the timeless child, and isn't two timelines created from one, die in the TARDIS, exploding after the... Look, you can do that if you want. Just ignore it. Just ignore the timeless child. Like, here's the thing. I'm not trying to invalidate anybody who really cannot let go of the nature of the timeless child revelation. Like, I've got enough hang-ups in my brain where there's stuff that, like, I just can't get over or can't roll with or can't adjust my brain to work with. So when I say just ignore it, if you can't, I'm not trying to shame you for that. But for me, and speaking strictly from my perspective, because ultimately it's the only perspective I've got, I don't see how anything that you would have to do to try and actively retcon, undo, or correct it is worth it when you could just ignore it and move on like we did with the half-human bullshit from the 8th Doctor's movie. Just summed up my dissertation better than me. Well said, Vera. Oh, great. Do I get a degree? Criminalizing sex work is only to make people doing it feel superior. I'm going to disagree with that. Joel, criminalizing sex work is done to control women. Now, again, to be clear, all genders participate in sex work of all kinds. However, it is perceived as being something that women do. And it is perceived as women being allowed to basically have enough authority over their own bodies that they can care for themselves and get their own income without having to engage in the systems that are built to ignore them, by and large. Because no matter what you think of the overall society that we live in, the structures of it, the foundation, was built on a foundation of white supremacy and misogyny. Now, that does not mean that everyone who lives in our society, even at the time it was founded, was a white supremacist or a misogynist. But these are two things baked into the system. And women having the power to basically just offer themselves at a price of their choosing under circumstances that they approve of, that is power that people with power are not comfortable with women having. And that is the overriding motivation more often than not as to why there is the push to criminalize sex work. And, you know, prostitution in particular, but sex work in general. And, like, I remember being so confused. I forget how old I was. I remember being so confused when it was worded to me that prostitutes sell their body for money. That made absolutely no sense to me. Just that statement, or why that was different from anyone else. Because how is it that offering your body for the purpose of someone else's interactions with it that will grant them pleasure fundamentally different from offering your body to lift heavy objects, to cut down trees, to do anything else? If you can offer your body for labor, what makes that labor different? What makes that labor wrong? I have a feeling this is going to be the thing I keep coming back to this whole stream. I'm just going to own it at this point. During my graduation, I'll yell, "I'm a fraud!" on stage and tell everyone to go subscribe to your channel. I won't stop you. Stars Emma Thompson's real sex positive. I ended up feeling so much better by the end of the movie. I watched it on Amazon Prime. I don't know if it's on anything else. I will try to look into it. I can't promise. There's so much stuff I'm behind on. I would argue controlling women and wanting to feel superior very much go together. Fair, but I think the sense of superiority by most of the people who pass these laws, cis, straight, white men, are... The sense of superiority, again, is baked in. But yeah, no, that's not wrong. The script for MCU's Ned, CEO of Sex, would have been about Ned making sex work legal nationwide. I hope it leaves development hell and makes it into Phase 5. That would be an interesting pitch. And selling their bodies narrative is so toxic, it encourages abusive behavior in Johnson. Well, yeah. Because wording like that presumes that once money has changed hands, their body is yours to do with as you will. You now own it for the period of time you have paid for. Which is the inherent implication of that kind of language. Do you watch Verity Richie? Nope. I don't have a clue who that is. Avatar fan 10,000. I had to see how many zeros were there. Thank you very much for the super chat. You get a heart from me. Just want to say I love your content and I'm happy to see you live. Aw, thank you. I'm happy to have you here. Have you ever had strawberry brownies with white chocolate chips? I haven't had strawberry brownies at all. I can be very simple when it comes to stuff like that. It gets overcomplicated. It's like, oh, here's this thing that's normally this flavor, but we've injected it with this and added this. I'm like, that's, whoa, slow down. Did you watch the Met Gala? I didn't even know it was a thing until I saw a clip of the cockroach that the photographer took pictures of as if it was strutting the runway. Yeah. See, I would ask, do I look like I care about fashion? Except that, I've obviously put a little work into my appearance. So, I care how I look. But I super don't care about fashion in the broad strokes, in the abstract, as a thing that people engage with. I so don't care. Just arrived. Are we talking about MTG's recent crusade against Pornhub? Oh, is that a thing now? No, we weren't, though it fits into the general nonsense we've been talking about. There was someone dressed up as a cat. Like cheap Halloween costume or proper furry? Because if they actually had proper fursuited folks go down the runway at the Met Gala, then I might pay attention. Pornhub cut off Utah? I missed that one. Oh, no porn for you. MTG is crazy. I'm always hesitant to call anybody crazy. Her public persona is unhinged, absolutely. I openly question how many of these people who are the loudest are actually to that extreme. And I don't mean this in a, I'll give them a benefit of the doubt way. I mean in a, if you do shit that gets you attention, why would you stop doing it? If she gets more attention saying absolutely insane shit, why would she stop? Like she was a QAnon person before she was in Congress. So like literally acting like she was completely detached from reality got her into office. Why would she stop? To the point that, from a certain logic, it even makes sense to crank it up. More attention, more spotlight. Ex-hamster always also cut off Utah. Cool. Fuck Utah. Was my favorite and least favorite Doctor Who episode. Currently favorite is still the Dr. Falls. Least favorite is Idiot's Lantern. That one will probably never change. I still think Magic the Gathering when I see MTG. Yeah, I do too. It takes me a second. I need the context cues. Am I okay with you calling Yee crazy? Think he's high getting off his meds. Here's what I will say. If you want to have an actual conversation about the acknowledged fact, acknowledged by him, that he has bipolar disorder, and you want to have a conversation about his actions through the lens of that, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. But being that I don't have a lot of deep understanding, and as far as bipolarness goes, and I say that as someone who is like, I'm not unfamiliar. I'm familiar with how it can manifest, but it also manifests in very personalized ways. And there's a conversation to be had there. I don't think this is the appropriate place to do it, but so she's probably 40-60 on the grifter actually unhinged scale. What are my thoughts on video game movies and TV shows then versus now? Largely unchanged. What I will grant is I am at this point certainly more open to I'm more open to TV show adaptations of video games than I am film. I have a very difficult time picturing any video game that would make a legitimately good film. That having been said, we have now had 2 legitimately good TV series based off video games. One was Castlevania, the other was The Last of Us. What I will say, though, is that those should not be taken as a measure for, oh, great, the TV shows will be awesome. Not necessarily. With The Last of Us, it's worth noting, you talk to people about those games long enough, and most of them will acknowledge the story was probably always going to work better outside of a video game context than in it. So that was a story that honestly probably should have been a show from the first point at which it started. And with Castlevania, that has shockingly deep and shockingly coherent lore to draw from. It actually doesn't try to retell the story of a specific video game. It pulls a bit from Castlevania 3 and a little bit from Symphony of the Night, but a lot of it's just pulling the lore together. And if you can get a particularly talented writer, and I know Warren Ellis is a problematic person now, but he's a very talented writer, to pull all that together and give him the freedom to do it, yeah. No, that worked. I am unconvinced of video game movies ever really working at all. Like, I'm not going to say they're all going to be terrible. We'll probably top out at, okay, that was fine. And that's probably as good as it'll ever get. I haven't seen much of your opinion on video games. What am I into? Well, if you head on over to the break room of Geeks, I actually do review video games every now and then. I tend to play retro style, if not actual retro games, largely because fully rendered 3D has a tendency to make me motion sick. And so most of the big budget mainstream games that come out now are just completely off the table. They will make me want to throw up. And so I play a lot of Metroidvanias, a lot of roguelikes, you know, various things of that nature. Point-and-click adventures still somewhat. That sort of thing. I don't think people like MTG or Trump are introspective enough to actually have real beliefs. Make sense? Like, I don't ever think I say this, but this is what I actually believe. I would agree with you on Trump. Because if you look on him on a long enough time scale, oh, Arcane. Thank you, John Vinyls. Yes, that is the other one that is very good. And because, like, again, not really based off the game itself, diving into the lore and reshaping a lot of it. So yes, we are up to 3 very good series. But anyway, I would say that statement, 255 AD, is much more true of Trump than of MTG. Because, you know, Trump has literally flip-flopped 180 degrees for no apparent reason, other than he seems to think it's what would get him the best reaction to whoever he's talking to, or it's what he can somehow cash in on for clout or money or whatever. He probably legitimately has no belief beyond will this benefit me. MTG has had a much narrower frame of the things that she says and pushes for that is more, it is philosophically consistent enough that there's probably some underlying beliefs there. Trump's all over the goddamn place. He'll just say whatever. Like, he legit doesn't care. So I'd say if it's true of anybody, it's probably true of him. Excuse me. Are you perchance an FTL fan? I do like FTL, Pickles. I haven't played it in a bit, but I do like that one. Warren Ellis is like a 1 Michelin star chef who will sous vide the greens to perfection but treats his staff dreadfully. That's an interesting comparison. Not awful. Have I ever been to a bottle redemption center? I mean, probably as a kid, we probably took a field trip to one. Not sure if there was a lead into that question. Detective Pikachu is an outlier on that point. I think Detective Pikachu is probably about the best one that we've had so far. And even that one, like, it's cute. It's sweet. I forget it exists, to be honest. Why would Trump care? No matter what he says, his followers stick by him. Every now and then. Because the thing is, Trump may not have beliefs. His followers do. He has tapped into people with very strong beliefs. And every now and then he steps on the wrong side of that. That happened when he tried to encourage a group that supported him to get the vaccine. Because he knew it worked, and he thought he could benefit from it because the vaccine was developed under his watch. He thought he could cash in on that. And when he tried to encourage a crowd of his supporters to get the vaccine, he was booed. They won't follow him no matter what, but they don't care if he's inconsistent, nor do they care if he's horrible. They believe that he will accomplish the things they want to happen in this country. But if and when he directly stands in the way of that, or appears to take a position contradictory to it, they don't put up with it. The thing is, ultimately, Trump has no plan. He creates policy by vibe. He basically goes by what gets a pop at the rallies. Cool, I'll do that. It's almost holistic governance. The culture story where they first visit Earth is set in 1977, but Banks wrote it in 1990. Is that an odd choice? Like that it'd be like us setting a sci-fi book in 2010 for no reason. I mean, I'd have to read it to figure out whether or not the 1970s setting benefits the story in any specific way. Because depending on the way the culture is taken in, maybe a mid-late 70s cultural perspective directly influences the way the story pans out, and it wouldn't pan out the same way set in another decade. That's me speculating. Supreme Omega, thank you very much. On Buffy, thoughts on the 6th season, aka the really dark season with Willow's addiction, Buffy's depression, and the musical episode. Pros and cons. Well, keep in mind, I have not rewatched any of Buffy in a long time. I tended to go back and forth as to whether I thought the 2nd season or the 6th season was the best season of the show. Now, again, I don't know if I still stand by that sentiment, but I can tell you it used to be my sentiment that it was in contention for the best season with season 2. I thought it was really good. I don't know how I'd feel about it now if I were to rewatch it, but there's a lot of good stuff in it. The musical episode is legitimately great. They did a surprisingly good job of actually having Dawn work for me a bit better after her actual arc in the previous season. I thought the Willow's addiction thing was a little clumsy, but I did find the Dark Willow elements to be very engaging. Certainly grabbed my attention. And season 6 also has one of my all-time favorites, character returning to a show after a period away, moments in all of television. Spoilers for Buffy season 6. So Willow has gone full bad at this point. She's already flayed Warren, and she is just embracing being evil. And she says to Buffy, I might not have the exact words now, but it's basically, there isn't a force on Earth that could stop me. And suddenly she is flung back into a set of bookcases, and there stands Giles, who has been gone since midway through the season, and he just says, I'd like to test that theory. End of episode. Oh, God, I love it. I love it so much. Am I going to react to the Doom Part 2 trailer? Oh, crap. Is it out? Damn it. Freaking trailers, man. Oh, hey, Meg. Glad you made it. Good to see ya. Idiot Slander was covered in and on the cover of the latest Doctor Who magazine, probably only because of the new coronation. They didn't mention the ending at all. Of course they didn't. I mean, like, if you're going to say anything positive about the episode, you kind of can't talk about that ending because it removes anything else positive about the episode. That ending is harmful. It is legitimately a dangerous message. So, Jared Leto was dressed up in the Met Gala in a cat fursuit costume, and all my furry friends are like, he isn't part of us. I would swiftly disown Jared Leto too. Is it weird that I really enjoyed Doom Part 1, but have little to no excitement for Part 2? I don't have a ton of excitement for Part 2, but it's partly because I was not nearly as bowled over by Part 1 as seemingly every other pundit, critic, creator, whatever, on this platform in the freaking planet seemed to be. Like, everybody lost their mind. So many people who I watched are like, had it in their top 10 at the end of the year. Some people had it as their number 1. I'm like, really? Like, it was good. Don't get me wrong, but I was like, really? Really? Am I the only one who thinks Buffy is insanely overrated and mid at best? I think one's opinion of Buffy has a lot to do with when you came to it. It was quite a thing for its time. But apologies in advance if I tick anybody off with this comparison, but I'll do it anyway. I feel about it a little bit like how I feel about Avatar: The Last Airbender, which was that it was seminal when it came out, massively influential, but so many things have done what it did, and some things have done it better, and things as a whole have moved forward, that if you weren't there to see it at or close to the time when it aired to appreciate how fresh it was in the moment, then going back to it some years after the fact, yeah, it comes off as okay. And I make that comparison because I do have a love of Buffy, because I experienced it pretty soon after it wrapped up, and I don't have that love for Avatar because I experienced it years and years and years later. But I suspect if I'd watched Avatar: The Last Airbender at the time, I probably would have liked it very much. You'd have to read it. You will. That's the state of the art. Oh, okay. Well, you'll get my full thoughts on that eventually. Ever heard of the various mythological stories about the world being formed from the corpse of a giant? Yeah, here and there. I don't know them particularly well, though. Speaking of Trump, do we have to? I know I went off on him for a minute, but okay. Deep South supporters of him were asked if he told you to get the vaccine, would you? And the guy's response was, why would I? He's a liberal New Yorker. That basically sums it up. Like, his supporters support him to the extent that he will get them what they want, or they think he will. The reporter asked, why did you vote for him? The guy said he was the only good choice of the two options. I had such a crush on I had such a crush on Giles for some reason. The reason was Anthony Stewart Head, and it is valid. I know a critic who prefers the David Lynch Dune movie to the new one. That's a take. I could see an argument where someone could potentially find the David Lynch movie more interesting. It's not better. Like at all. Can I impersonate Beavis and Butthead? I can. Don't really feel like it, though. I'm finally going to see the Super Mario Brothers movie tomorrow night. Stoked. Awesome, Meg. You'll have to let me know what you think of it. And let me know how Bowser's song is. What you think of that. Is the guy at the beginning of A New Hope the only person Vader kills with his bare hands? No force power, no lightsaber? He might be. I mean, arguably, there's a little force power for him to get the lift, the one-hand lift on the neck. But, yeah, it could be. The Dune movie did something I love. The technology is exactly like it is in the book written in 1965. They didn't update it at all. Yeah, I respect that as well. I shipped Taryn Willow so hard, still didn't figure out I was queer for a long time. Oh, that's a mood. Who was the Avatar character you didn't like? There's a few characters I don't super care for, but the character who people in the comments told me that I would like, who I didn't, was Toph. Toph really didn't work for me. She rubbed me the wrong way. Support him because it'll get us what we want is the extent of my support for Biden. Am I analogous to a Trump supporter? No, because you're more honest about it. I think a lot of people, well, this is true of the right in general. A lot of people get very, very invested in the narrative of what the right is supposed to be. It's why you don't get a lot of self-criticism on the right. Other than like weird bullshit infighting. And they tend to get in lockstep. And whether that's out of a conscious choice of if we, or at least they try to, like they're dealing with infighting right now in the House and whatnot, but like the supporters by and large tend to want enough of the same thing. The thing is with people like Biden, for me, it's not even a case of I voted for Biden because he'll get us what we want. I voted for Biden because it was damage mitigation. He will do less to destroy everything than, well, Trump in particular, or honestly, probably anybody on the right. So for me, it wasn't even really support of Biden. It was what's the least harmful option. So I do think there is a difference. I always feel like my to-do list is rarely finished. Stress is stupidly constant. Oh, Meg. Boy, do I fail you on that. I met Anthony Stewart Head and asked him how was it to work with Elizabeth Sladen, and he said she was chuffed. That's cute. Anthony Stewart Head singing on the Rocky Horror Karaoke Show was lit. I've only seen like a small clip of that. Yeah. I get it. Meg wrangling V is a whole thing. Ah, Carol, what? Yeah, no, it's true. I don't thank you enough for trying to wrangle my nonsense brain. I don't know why you put up with me. But thank you for doing so. I wish more sci-fi adaptations of old books did that. Like, I want to see what a visualization of what the author had in their head at the time, not what seems plausible now. That is one of the things that, like, to a certain extent, I appreciate that some of the Star Trek stuff is done. So, like, things like Star Trek Strange New Worlds has updated and streamlined the look of things a little bit, so it's not quite as blocky. It's not so aesthetically 60s, but, like, we live in an age where we have smartphones that do way more than a freaking communicator in the original Star Trek did. But they've still got them with those because that's what they had in the show, so we keep them going. So, yeah, I get what you're saying. Why didn't I like Toph? I didn't like Toph because she was the kind of person whose response to literally everything was negativity. And it's not that I don't mind cynical characters. I can be a very cynical person. And I can appreciate cynical characters. But people who seem to take their existence as just, oh, thing good? No, thing bad, actually. Was just the feel I got off her. And maybe she's better in the last season. I didn't finish it. Still don't plan to. Laura's Hound, not only have I seen Repo the Genetic Opera, I did a whole video on that. You can look it up. First part of the 8-part Big Finish 60th anniversary story drops today. Great! I can't afford it, so... I have the entire Rocky Horror Karaoke thing recorded. Ooh. I might... We might need to set that up as a thing. Superfan. Avatar Superfan. As a lifelong fan of Avatar The Last Airbender, I suspected you might have been. I think Toph is good, but if you don't like characters who are apathetic, you might not like her. Yeah, I actually, you know what? That's a really good distinction. I can deal with cynical characters. Apathetic really can rub me the wrong way. It's rare that I engage well with an apathetic character. Because if you come across like you just aren't invested in much of anything, like, why would I be invested in you? It's been long enough that I even tried watching the back end of Avatar that, like, I can't even say that with a ton of certainty because my memories are fading. But anyway, I need to jump on the Discord. I got to tackle those questions. And apologies to anyone who dropped questions in the Discord. I did say, and it looks like not everybody noticed, that I'm only doing 2 questions per person this time because I do have the hard stop at 8. But here we go. My friends and I were talking a couple weeks ago about how DC could overtake Marvel this year. How likely do you think that is, especially now with the writer's strike going on? Well, the writer's strike shouldn't impact very much this year. The ripple effect of the writer's strike is, well, I say it shouldn't affect much this year. It shouldn't affect much of the kind of stuff Marvel and DC do this year. The ripple effect of a writer's strike generally tends to hit anything that has a really fast turnaround time. So, you know, things like late night shows, Saturday Night Live, South Park, which is turned around in like a week. Stuff like that gets hit immediately. Everything else, you're actually not going to see the effects until a bit later when things being made off of incomplete or cobbled together or quick, the strikes ended, we need to get back on top of this and we need to keep a schedule. Those things start happening. Or, you know, movies that were rushed into production on unfinished scripts before the strike started. Those movies and those projects aren't going to come out until next year. All right, damn it. I was hoping this wouldn't happen, but that's bugging me. Hope that doesn't skeeve anybody, but stupid Lash was poking me a little bit. I gotta get rid of that. Anyways, so I don't think the writer's strike is really going to truly have its effects felt, especially stuff like DC and Marvel this year. Could DC overtake Marvel this year? I mean, I think a lot of it's going to come down to whether or not people actually turn out for The Flash. And I don't know if they will. I'm not planning to see it, but plenty of people will. Do you think The Culture is a particularly humorous series? Like, would you mention it if you were recommending it to someone? Loads of videos and even academic essays analyzing the series' philosophy, and no one ever talks about its humor. The thing is, there is a lot of good humor in the Culture stories, you know, but a lot of it's character-based, and it's not like the core of a lot of what's going on. It's individual scenes, or it's one character. Again, Demyson comes to mind, who I really loved and I found quite funny quite often, but I don't feel like humor is a recurrent aspect as opposed to a core theme. So if you're going to do a deep dive on it, humor would be a slightly odd thing to choose to focus on or to highlight excessively. It's there, certainly, but it's not the heart of what the series is, at least from what I've taken in of it. If you were writing a period piece, would you give your protagonist period-appropriate morality, i.e., and thus risk making them less sympathetic, or simply give them modern-seeming morality, even though it'll seem anachronistic? A few years ago, I read a book series that was about an aristocratic Roman teenager who's an outcast because of a facial deformity, runs away from a home to become a gladiator, and ends up in Spartacus's army. The thing is, part of his backstory is he lost his virginity by ordering his family's slaves to sleep with him, and throughout the series, he never questions if that is wrong. Like, it's not even brought up more than once. Could you have sympathy for a protagonist who thinks like this? I think making the choice to fully commit to the morals of the time and the society in a historical setting, even for a protagonist you are meant to like, is a risky move to make. I personally would not make it. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you need to do a 180 and write them as if, oh, they totally understand that slavery is wrong. Like, my preference in a situation like that would be to write that, you know, his family just isn't well off to own that many slaves, and like avoid it would be probably my personal option on that, because it is difficult. Even though it is more accurate to do that. And again, it's a choice I can understand. It's not one I'd make, though, if it was a character I was genuinely trying to get people to like. Loved your cameo in DW 2012. Were you following the script, or were you allowed to ad-lib? Okay, so if folks have not already seen it, DW 2012 has for years now been doing a series of Doctor Who fan films, and in their most recent one called, I believe, The Most Hated Man on Earth, I and a number of other Who-tubers make cameo appearances, basically sort of as ourselves, but not quite. And it was a little bit of both on that gen. I was given a script, but I was told, like, if you want to rework this a little so that it fits your voice better or add a little bit to it, go ahead. And so I was working off a script, but I was not following the exact letter of that script. Will there be audio versions of your book coming out in the future? Yes, yes. I need to edit. I need to finish edit the freaking thing. It takes forever. Whose charity live stream for the podcast currently? How far ahead are you with recording? The charity live stream that I will be going on at 9 Eastern Daylight Time is Transcend VR on Aziel's channel. That's Azeal. It is for trans causes and trans activism, etc. And with the podcast, with Jumpgate, we are 2 weeks ahead at present. We've been further ahead than that before, and we may try and get further ahead than that again in the future, but that's where we are right now. Oh, this one had 3 questions. I'm only going to tackle the first 2. I recently fell headfirst in the world of Neil Gaiman's Sandman and have read the entire series as well as watched the first season on Netflix. Taking other comic book adaptations into account, do you think Netflix series will differ more from the path of the original comic series? I did a whole video talking about how good I think Netflix's Sandman is as an adaptation, largely because of the differences it makes. If you want a super loyal adaptation, there's the Audible audiobooks. Those are super loyal. This was a chance to do something a little bit different, and I'm glad they took it. And I will be curious to what other changes get made down the line. After seeing your video on the Harry Potter HBO series and how Warner seems desperate to make money with the IP, do you think it's mainly backlash against Rowling for her beliefs, or is it just symptomatic of changing pop culture altogether? I think it's both. I think in large part, Harry Potter has not been latched onto to the younger generation beyond whatever parents read it directly to their kids. And that's a dwindling thing. And just will be. You can't super grow ultra loyal fan bases that way. So I think it's a combination. I think pop culture as a whole is moving on. And young people are finding other stuff. They're finding stuff that is new and more of the now that they're gravitating towards more than Harry Potter in the first place. Do you think the space opera, along with its subsidiary, the space western, is one of the more imaginative genres, given the fact one can create vast expansive galaxies, races, and cultures of species, not worry too much about clashing with other established entities? I wouldn't say it's necessarily more imaginative. There's a lot more freedom. I'll give you that. That doesn't necessarily make it more imaginative, because some people have their imaginations thrive under restrictions, and some people, when you give them all the options in the world, just come up with something really bland. So there's a lot more freedom. Imagination is not inherent to the genre, though. What are your thoughts on the idea that the Hulk may be non-binary? That's new. Hadn't heard that one. There is some evidence of this in canon, such as Hulk referring to himself as not a man, but simply as Hulk. I'm NB myself, so it could be some wishful projecting on my part. Do you think it's an interesting idea? It's an interesting idea. I don't think there's too much I can think of that would, at least in the MCU version of the Hulk, that would openly contradict it. Because Hulk does seem to think of himself as separate, certainly separate from Banner, but separate from people in general. But I would see when Hulk says something to the extent of not being a man, my own personal suspicion is that has more to do with not feeling like human, so like man as in human being, and less to do with man as in male gender. But there's certainly no reason you couldn't interpret it that way. How important do you think story is in video games? Depends on the video game. Some genres, it's incredibly important. Point and click adventure, things like that, which are basically narrative with minimal gameplay, you better nail your story. Otherwise, if you've nailed a really entertaining and enjoyable core gameplay loop that is fun to do regardless of the context, wrapping a nice context around it will make it better. But It's difficult to argue whether or not it's important. I don't think it's always true, but I do think what John Carmack said about story in video games, which is, if you don't know this quote, he said that story in video games is a bit like story in porn. It's kind of nice to have, but it's not the thing anybody's there for. I don't think that is always true, and actually I think it's kind of increasingly, it's true increasingly less often, but it is definitely still sometimes true. Given that in Star Wars, droids can be owned and made to follow orders, do you think that the increasing trend to show them as having complex emotion and a level of self-awareness might become problematic? Oh, it's already problematic. You think about the droids for more than 2 seconds, it's actually a big problem. I was recently watching an episode of The Mandalorian where Mando pushes a droid that clearly didn't want to leave its owner, and then later in that episode forced it to explore a dangerous environment against its wishes so that he didn't need to risk his own life. And the whole thing made me draw uncomfortable parallels to slavery and abuse or controlling relationships. Yeah, Star Wars has yet to properly grapple with the fact that droids are slaves, because they are clearly sentient and have always been depicted as having agency and their own thoughts and their own emotions, but are just disposable labor. Star Wars has yet to grapple with that. And it's not necessarily obligated to, but the longer it goes on and it doesn't, and especially when moments like that show up in the newer stuff, the more it's like, Anyways, popping back. Don't have too much time left, but, we got some more super chats in. Here we go. Supreme Omega on Harry Potter. Back in the 90s and 2000s, did people not realize the more problematic elements like the house elves, the goblins and Gringotts, etc.? Some people didn't. I didn't. I definitely didn't notice the goblins on my own reading. The house elves, I didn't fully think about it. I did think it was weird that it was brought up and not properly dealt with, but I didn't fully think about it. And I think the thing is, a lot of it has to do with being in a position of privilege. Fundamentally, privilege is the privilege to not have to think about certain things. And a lot of the reader base of Harry Potter are privileged enough to not have to think about racial allegories or anti-Semitic visual coding and tropes. And so, yeah, a lot of people did flat out miss it. And a lot of us had to be told. I did. Now, it's just a question of when you are told whether you decide to be a dick and go like, nuh-uh, or if you go, oh, well, that's a thing, isn't it? And then move on however you need to. South Park is non-union. Screw them. Are they? I did not realize that. It's animated. It would be. Oh. And thank you for the super chat, 255 AD. And Supreme Omega back once more. On Robin, while I feel Jason Todd should have stayed dead, yes. Victim blaming does bother me in the comics because nobody blames his mom who betrayed him. The thing is, like it's odd, I've never really blamed Jason for his own death. I guess some people do. But, in any case, like, I only kind of briefly read, I kind of skimmed through Death in the Family years ago. So, like, I don't have a super strong opinion about his mother as she was portrayed in there. But yeah, there's certainly, if you're going to lay blame, her and the Joker would have the lion's share. And possibly Batman for putting him in that situation at all since he was a child. But that's also why he's most interesting dead, because he is the worst possible consequences of what Robin is. And Batman should have had to live with that instead of bringing him back from the freaking dead. Anyways, stress is creeping in. Nice to be here with you all. Take it easy. Thank you for stopping in, Meg. I need to wrap it up anyway because I need to prep for the next stream. So that brings up what is coming up. In about an hour, I will be on Aziel's stream, and I'll be there for a chunk of time, and we'll talk about whatever. Do the abominations in the outhouse suffer from the same problem as house elves or droids? They do not exhibit anywhere near the same level of sentience. Now, that doesn't mean that they exhibit no sentience, but they're not even close to the same amount. So, no, John, that wouldn't be the same. Apparently, there is a Yes, Dharma. I'll send the link to the Discord. Apparently there is a trailer for the next Dune, so I'll have a reaction to that out. I don't know, tomorrow, most likely. And then tomorrow also, I'll be on Twitch in the morning, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. I believe, if I remember correctly, Carolyn, we're starting Persona 5, which I've not played any of the Persona games, so we'll see how that goes. And yeah, Saturday will be my thoughts on the potential for R-rated Marvel films. And yeah, that's what's coming up the rest of this week. Thanks everybody for joining me. Sorry I couldn't go a little bit overtime like I usually do, but yeah, I got other stuff I need to jump on and deal with. So I hope everybody has a great rest of the day, a great rest of the week. I'm sure I will see some of you. Well, some of you will see me. I don't know how much interaction there is with the chat, but some of you will see me on Aziel's live stream in a little bit. And some of you will see me in the morning on Twitch. But in any case, remember that you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. Damn it, I felt that. I had a seed from a raspberry at the back of my throat. I'm like, I can hold it off and get through my outro. And I didn't. You are beautiful. You are valid. You are loved. You are the council. I'm just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. McCavity!